All right, so welcome everybody. This is an intro to log analysis. All right, so I'm Chris, also Necrosis on Discord. I'm a second-year transfer, CS major, and like everything good in the world, I'm still a noob. And then co-presenting with me today is going to be RJ. I want to say hi.
Yeah, so I'm RJ. That's my Discord handle there. I'm a first year freshman, CSE major.
Yeah, Sean, so that says Necrosis. That is right. It's a K, not a C. All right. So let's start off with like a little quick poll, which is going to be so exciting. I guess I should then yes or no. A and B, same thing. All right. Yeah, so a wonderful, exciting that nobody looks at their logs, which is, I think is pretty standard for most people who don't work in cybersecurity, or really they don't work in like digital forensics or incident response specifically. Yeah, so today we are going to have some hands-on stuff. So we've uploaded a log file, which you can download from that URL. And then we're going to cover Excel and the Linux terminal for handling log files. So if you can, or if you want to, go ahead and download from there. And this is in the shared notes again, if you guys want it. All right, so what is log analysis? It really is what it sounds like. Yeah, computers generate log messages. And so, you need to go back eventually, more often than not, to look at different kind of intrusion events, maybe errors that occur. So there's a lot of, good reasons to kind of like take a look at that. Yeah, so why are you doing this? The goal isn't really to make your eyes bleed, but it provides like useful numbers, lots of good information, not just in security, but in data analysis. Data science also can lend itself to log analysis. And one of the key things from a security standpoint is being able to see what's going on in your system, mitigating any risks that might appear. Like say somebody's logging in at really strange hours, your logs will be able to identify that. Complying with policies, kind of the same thing. Like in my work with cybersecurity, we have to have a long list of security controls that are all related to audit logs and audit files, like defining what kind of information needs to be in the logs themselves. So how do you manage all this? Because yes, it does get overwhelming very quickly. So one of the more kind of recent tools here is a SIEM, is how some people say it. It's basically an aggregate system, like a central file server almost, or a central log server. So it'll collect information from a variety of sources, your switches, your routers, your web applications, your operating system, the workstations, anything you want to log can be captured here. And really, this is kind of like the key tool for a lot of security professionals that work in like the security operations centers, like the SOC, SOC, because you can set up alerts with these tools, so you're not always having to dig through. Like today, we'll look at it more for manual processing of the log analysis, but really you can also use like the SIEM to do a lot of that processing automation for you. So here's a few of the top SIEM vendors. SolarWinds, I sure some people have heard of. Splunk is by far probably the most popular one available right now. um, Logarithm is another well-known one. So yeah, so let's play a little game here. So let's spot the fake. So let's try another one of these polls here. So which one of these do you think is the fake SIEM provider? All right, so we're got a good response here. So it looks like everyone kind of voted their own different ways. So the real one, or I guess the fake one, really is kind of Chronicle, the cloud SIEM. Chronicle was a former Google like X department that officially became part of Google Cloud. So that actual tool doesn't like exist. And so anyone who just joined, I noticed a couple people jumped in. In the shared notes, there's some like download instructions for later in the workshop. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the SIEMs, but is there anything kind of like more modern related to logging? One of the most popular ones that pops up a lot in the cloud environments is an elk stack. And what an elk stack is 3 different open source projects that are built and integrated together to basically get a stack going. Like you can see these wonderful elks standing up here. What's actually they got a lot of cool stickers, so I highly recommend researching that and seeing about getting some of their stickers. And so they've added a couple other features, like Beats is another open source project that they've added into it that has led to the development of the Elastic Stack. I know, like, even if you look this up, Amazon Web Services offers implementation instructions, so it's it's really well integrated in most modern environments. Right. So Linage, the cloud, I guess in French. I don't know. So yeah, so in the cloud, you also have a lot of kind of log aggregation tools. Amazon's AWS, the most popular one. It's CloudWatch. They've got a lot of other ones. Like we'll deal with one later called CloudFront. Azure's main one is just called Monitor. Google Cloud is also very unique in cloud monitoring. All of these kind of provide a lot of the similar functionality. So you can go into each one, view event files. Like if anyone's ever used Event Viewer on Windows, it's kind of similar. You can configure alerts. You can access it through APIs for better automation. They've got the good-looking dashboards and whatnot. So manual analysis. So yeah, have anyone ever done any kind of manual analysis for logs? I know if you've done any kind of CTFs, you might have come across this before. Stare at it really long. Nice. Control F. Control F. Yeah. So that's kind of a good answer there. Control F helps looking for specific things. But as you'll see when we get to the workshop, that the volume of data doesn't always lend itself to Control F. But who knows? Maybe we'll be able to use it. So my favorite kind of method for doing these challenges is Excel. I'm just really familiar with it from previous work. So I've never really used other tools for log analysis other than third-party apps. So some of the good things about Excel are the pivot tables. If you're not familiar with that, basically you have a data set, you highlight it all, create a pivot table, and you're able to filter and modify sections to really kind of like dig in. And I'll show that more later when we get hands-on. Again, there's lots of formulas that are built in. Built-in ones are called functions, but you can always build your own. I don't know if anyone's ever dealt with VBA code, but recently I had to use that for my work. And yeah, if you want to go down that route, at least for log analysis, I think there's better scripting languages. I had to use it only for a very specific use case. So some of the Excel functions that will be really useful in doing kind of a log analysis is VLOOKUP, which allows you to match data in different rows, and I'll show you an example of that. Concatenate, really, there's a function that is concatenate, but I prefer just to use the and symbol, the ampersand, which that'll produce a new string for you. Mid, left, and right, those will basically are kind of like cut, so you can use the second number here, the 4, to kind of chop off information. So if you had 5 character long string, left would capture everything left of the 4th position. And this is indexing 1, not indexing 0. Search and find also works similarly. The key difference between search and find is search is not case sensitive, but find is definitely case sensitive. So this hey will give you in lowercase h for search, but it will not for find. And it returns the position of wherever that string is found. And then, you've got the usual kind of functions that I'm sure you all use as sum, count, ifs, ands, average. Lots of good ones that are basic in any kind of coding language. All right. So how many people have taken 15L? Let's see here. Start the poll. All right. Everybody has taken 15L already. Yes, 15L I'm sure was fun, right? Woohoo, 15L. How many people took it with Gary? Did anyone have Gary for 15L? Yeah, I really enjoyed it, I guess. But that I just asked that because a lot of what we learned there, yeah, RJ actually answered a question this time. But yeah, so I'm going to actually turn it over to him to talk a little bit about the Linux commands. Go ahead, RJ, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Since most of you already, like all of us, have taken 15L, this should be more of a review, maybe some commands you don't know. But we're going to be using commands that are built into Linux to try to look at these logs. So some of the commands are grep, sort, unique, wc, and awk. And then we'll also be exploring some basic scripting with bash scripts. Okay, so the first most important command is probably the pipe command. So if you don't know or just forgot, this command basically lets you use the output of one command as the input as another command. So you can string commands together. So you can just use multiple commands to make data processing easier. Probably the next most important command is grep. So all these commands, you can look at the menu pages for more details about their options and different usages. Grep basically is just a Control F for Linux. It allows you to search for different strings, and there's many different options. I'll get into a few of the more useful ones in the next slide. So the basic usage is just grep, and then you have your pattern, and then you specify your file. You can also use the pipe to pipe outputs from one command into grep to search through that output. If you specify the -E option, you can actually use the extended regex, which allows you to search with regular expression. These are just some of the more useful ones that we'll use in CDFs, like the -I, which is ignore case, or -V, which will give you the lines that do not contain your search parameter. Yeah, just C is just counting, and then -N will actually allow you to show which line number each result is on. Yeah, if you look at the man page, there's many more options you can use with grep. Okay, the next basic command is sort. So sort does what it says. It just sorts lines of a text file based on lexicographic order. So you just either pass in your outputs from a command into sort, and then it'll sort it to you. The default is in alphabetical order or lexicographical ordering, but you can specify like which different order you can do, and you can also sort based off of a key, which basically means you can sort based off of a column, and then we'll get into that more in the examples. Okay, the next command is unique. I don't know if we covered this in 15L, but unique I think we did, but it just omits repeated lines or tells you which lines are repeated. It's pretty basic, but it's useful for log analysis. WC, it's a basic counting, so it'll count number of lines, number of words, number of bytes. This can be useful if you want to count the number of outputs from a command or the number of results. So you can just pass it into WC and then it'll just give you a single number. Finally, the last command that we'll go over is just the awk command. It's actually gawk for GNU. This is a pretty powerful scanning and processing language. So it's like its own language on its own. You can look at the man page to see all about it. But for basic usages, awk allows us to, for example, extract certain columns from our files and then print them, as shown in the first example. You can also make functions such as seeing if the first column matches a certain name, and then you can add up the lines that contain that name in certain columns and add up like column 5 of that line. So there's a lot of things you can do with awk. Yeah, so you just look at the manual page to find out more. Here's a couple more examples. One useful thing is when we're using awk with bash scripting, to actually pass in variables, you can use the -v option and then specify which variables you're going to be passing in. So we'll give you an example of how this works in a real bash script for one of the log analysis examples. Yeah, sorry about that typo. Yeah, so I guess just about now for what's the best scripting language?
It looks like I can only go up to E. Oh well. Yeah, if you want to vote for F or G, go ahead or H. You can put it in the chat since it didn't fit. Yeah, so they both have the same size logo. So that would be a tie. All right. So it looks like everybody loves Python, which is not that surprising. Yeah, so as you guys voted, you can see clearly that Python definitely rules over everything, with Bash being the next closest. Has anyone ever used Lua? That one is pretty unique, I think.
Yeah, I've used it on calculators.
Yeah. We actually needed it in the last CTF, apparently. I had no idea what to do with it, though.
Yeah, so just for very simple and fast scripting, you can just use Bash. It's also very useful because you can make scripts that run on like Linux machines to automatically parse log files and then do certain commands. You can do it with Python, but it just requires a bit more learning. So this is just a basic outline of a Bash script to read from a file and then just echo each line.
All right. Yeah, so this is going to start our hands-on portion of this. Finally, yay. I'm sure everybody's excited. So yeah, if you haven't yet, in the shared notes, you can download the files or the file for it. So yeah, so CloudFront, it's a web service that is basically a web front end that lets you run like a site. And yeah, so we're going to take a look at some of those logs here. All right, so here's a few questions. We've got 4 that you don't have to use Excel, but once you download it, go ahead and try parsing. And I'm going to probably give you, I don't know, probably like 5 minutes just to keep things rolling. All right, so go ahead and dive in, and I'll be in touch with you on the chat or by voice. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the screen share for a little bit. All right, hopefully everyone can kind of see that okay. So here, let me show you the log file real quick. Those, okay. Yeah, so this is the raw log file, which I just highlighted, Control A, highlight everything. And I copy and pasted it. And Excel is smart enough to be able to parse everything into its own columns. It's going to be really helpful for later. So the only thing I have added here so far is this top row, which is going to be all those data fields that I brought in from over on this Amazon website. So you can there's a bunch of them. Let's see, there's a total of 33 potential options. After about like 20 of them, we don't really care too much anymore. And the reason you want this title up here is it'll make the pivot table a lot easier to use. All right, so yeah, once you have that, you can just kind of highlight everything, Control Shift over and down. And so you're going to want to come up here to insert, and you can just insert a pivot table. And then, yep, it'll know that you want all this information. Nice and smart nowadays. And so when you hit OK, it's going to bring you over to this pivot table tab. On the right side, you have all your different options from your columns. You have filters, columns, rows, and values. So if we go back to our first question, it was how many total bytes were transferred. So we're going to want to look at bytes, obviously. So I'll probably put this in just right there, the sum of the bytes. So this will parse all of those rows already. So that would probably be the total number. If any of you got that, you can help me out to double check my numbers there. That's pretty much it. So the values, it knows to do the sum. You can change the option for average and count. But sum obviously is what we want. And so that should be our answer of the total number of bytes that have been transferred. So the next one is this edge plus number of requests. Okay, so same kind of idea. We're just going to drag and drop the edge into the rows. So this will tell us all of the different edges that were there. Right now, we have the number of bytes, that's not what we want. So let's go ahead and take this. Was it the number of requests? Actually, I think we can. Gotta remember which one it is here. Request ID. Yep. Okay, so this is the number of request IDs. So this would give us the total number of requests. A pivot table is not great at filtering on its own, like sorting wise. So I'm kind of lazy and just do that. I copy the information over and add a filter. Why is that not adding the filter? Yeah, so you can just sort largest to smallest. And it looks like that Miami 3 C2 had the most requests. Is this making sense so far? Everyone able to follow this? You can post in the chat if you're struggling. Okay. All right. So yeah, so the next one here's, what is the lowest average latency? So this is when we're going to want to change our output of this pivot table. I forgot average latency. Okay. So latency, anyone kind of know what latency is all about? So this is, oops, where'd it go? The latency is all about the time that something takes. So which edge has the lowest average latency? Okay, so instead of sum of time taken, we need to value field settings. We're going to do average. Okay, we've got our edges still. Well, again, we'll just copy and paste it for clarity's sake. Filter. And then this time we sort smallest to largest. And we have, this is Houston, IAD. I'm pretty sure it's Houston. Has the lowest average time taken, which would be translate to latency. All right. Yes, lag. Wait, am I lagging, or are you just saying that we're talking about lag and latency? All right, cool. All right, so yeah, so the last question here that I'm going to show, like in Excel with this pivot table, which is which city's edge is transferred the 10th most amount of bytes. So this is, got more words in it than probably steps to figure this out. Okay. So again, back to our pivot table. So this time we want the number of bytes again. All right, so this is our sum. And so we just need the 10th most, right? So down, highlight everything, paste, filter, sort largest, smallest, and you just go down to the 10th row, which because we have a title row would also be a Houston one. Yep, so it's really that simple to parse this thing using Excel. Again, I'm sure RJ is going to show us here some faster ways to do things with scripting. So let me go ahead and turn this back over. All right, next slide. All right, RJ, I'll let you go first, and maybe on a couple of these, I'll show you the Excel method if anyone wants me to.
Okay. So we'll start with the easy one first. The question is, what is the name and version number of the most popular browser? So if you looked at the resource for the AWS CloudFront, you can see that one of the columns specified the user agent for the browser that was used to access whatever pages. If you look, it was actually column number 11. So we can actually just use awk to extract column 11, and then we can sort it and then pass it into unique and then with this C flag, we can count the number of the same user agents, and then we can just sort and head it, and this will give us the user agents that appeared the most in this log, which I just shown on the right. And if you put this user agent in like just an online tool to parse it, you can see it was like Chrome 77 or something. So yeah, do you want to show on Excel or not?
Yeah, I think I can do that real quick. My screen again. I mean, it's kind of pretty much the same process. So we'll remove the bits. Oh, I guess was this just the most popular browser?
Yeah, it should be like user agent or something.
Okay, yeah. So user agent, we can just drop that into the rows, remove those edges, and we can also drag and drop to the values of count. But this is way too big on the screen. Copy it all to a new tab. Filter it. There you go. It would just be obviously that top one, I think. Which, yeah, it looks like my answer matches your answer. Didn't need a number.
No, that was just for sorting.
Cool.
But yeah.
Anybody have any questions on like that so far?
Okay, so this next one asks what edge has the most number of unique IP addresses. So this is pretty similar to the last one, except we want to we need the columns that specify the edge name and the ones that specify the IP addresses, which are columns 3 and 5. So we first extract those columns, and then we can sort it, and then run it through unique to remove the duplicate IP address and edge combinations. And then we can just extract the first column, which is the edge name now, and then run it through unique now since we removed the duplicate combinations. And then we just sort it and head it again, and this will give us the sorted order of the edges and how many unique IP addresses are in each one.
All right. So for this one, I think it would be a kind of an interesting, more challenge on the Excel version. So if you want, I can go ahead and share that with you.
Sure.
All right, way too many tabs here. So back to the pivot table. So we're going to start off with edges. Oops. All right, so we'll put that number of edges on the rows. Count of IP addresses is not going to do it. So yeah, so if we just put IP addresses here in the value, this is just the count, right? But this is not giving us any kind of unique information. I'm trying to remember how I did this one. I think for this one, we're going to have to use like the VLOOKUP information. Let me pull up my reference document. Figure this one out real quick. Bear with me. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I did. All right. So yeah, so the count here is and so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this edge and IP address data into a new tab real quick. It's because we don't want to ruin our raw data. We just want to manipulate a copy of it. We don't really care about the bytes, so we'll delete that. A nice thing is you which you can see here, it says it removed 11,356 duplicates, and there's only 824 remaining. With this new data set, then we can create a new pivot table to analyze it. So then you can do the edge and the IPs. So then this would give us a table with the largest one, which I think was LAX-C23. Yep. All right, and so yeah, so that's how you would have to solve this in Excel. Is you'd have to do a little bit extra manipulation.
Okay, for this last example, it's a bit more involved on the Linux side. We have to actually do a small script. So the question is, at the 10 edges with the most amount of bytes transferred, what is the average number of bytes transferred? So the way I approached this problem was I first needed a list of all the different edge names. So then I can go through each edge and then add up the number of bytes so I can get an average. So basically this first part of the script, the cat CloudFront.log, and then piping it to awk, this will just give me all the number of unique edge names, and it'll be in sort order, but it doesn't matter. And then the while loop, this will actually go through each edge name and then search it up in the CloudFront log, and then it's going to sum up a column number 4, which is the amount of bytes transferred, and then it'll print the edge name and then the sum of all the bytes transferred. And then at the very end, so this will append to a temporary file that I created, and at the very end, I'll just go ahead and sort it, and then see the top 10 results from that transfer the most bytes. And at the very end, there's another awk script that actually add up all the bytes and then print out the average of the top 10. So it's a bit.
Sorry.
What? No, it's the.
Everything's on here.
Yeah, everything's on here. So the very last line is the one that will actually sum up the bytes from the top 10. The top 10 that transfer the most amount of bytes. Yeah, so it's a bit more involved on the Linux side, but some advantages are if you have like a lot of different log files, you can just modify this to a few changes, so you can actually automate looking through all those files instead of like importing each one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least once you get it set up, it's much faster on the bash screen.
Yeah, but the setting up part does take some time.
So I think hopefully Linux can or we'll lose to my Excel powers here in this case. So in this situation, we already had, if we go back to our number of bytes, here in Excel, we've got our edges and the number of bytes, which, if I remember right, it's right here, is already copied on this tab. So let me unhighlight that just for sake. Make sure it's sorted largest to smallest. And we can take the top. Copy that over, and then just do an equals average. Average, and then you just highlight these rows. And there you go. So, yeah, I think that was a little bit easier in this use case. I don't know. What do you think, RJ?
Yeah, for this case, yeah, I think Excel is definitely easier if you're looking at just like one log. But yeah, there's some examples where a script would be more useful.
All right. Yeah, so before we start this slide, I just want to throw out a poll for everybody. So which one, after you saw like the couple of examples, which one did you think was the better or easier one to use? Right. So we got a neck and neck race here, and we need like one or two more votes to break a tie. Let's see. Anybody? You can vote, RJ. All right. Yeah, like I think I agree, and RJ kind of mentioned it. It really depends on the use case. Again, this is all for manual, of course. SIEM would be much better to do everything automatically. But to kind of like wrap up this workshop, I just kind of wanted to go over some of like the things that go on with these logs. So like one of the important parts of the situational awareness of the environments that you'll work in the future, and talking about the security side is hackers. Like one of the things you do, right, is you have to cover your tracks when you leave. And so how do you do that? You can disable the log. So, once you get the admin access, or if they didn't set permissions correctly, you can go in and disable the logging configuration. So that way you can do whatever hacks you want. And then when you're done, go back and turn it back on. And unless somebody's really paying attention, you might not catch it. This is kind of similar for modifying or destroying logs. And then surprisingly, recently, more and more people are just straight up destroying logs, right? So when you're done hacking, you just hit the delete button on that log file and it's gone completely, which can be really devastating for the company. So it's really important from a defender side to make sure your logging is on and it is secured. And then from the hacker side of things, you got to be careful because everything logs. Okay, so any kind of into that is not your owned device, most likely there's going to be a fingerprint of you being on there. Back in 2018, there was a lady who was like a disgruntled employee. When she left the company, she had left some admin access open, like some user accounts that nobody would probably notice that had admin privileges, and she started hacking into the airline and causing a bunch of crazy things to happen. Like she deleted like a seating chart, right? So people who have tickets and it says their seat on there, but they have like no way to verify who sits where on the plane. She, cleared out like the whole boarding pass process for like one airline, like for a whole day. So nobody could buy tickets to get on the planes. And then probably even more famously is the LulzSec. They are, I'm not going to say terrorists, but they're like a hacker group that does a lot of questionable things. And back in 2011, there was one of their members was trying to use a proxy called Hide My Ass to hide his nefarious work. But surprisingly, they kept logs, and when the police asked them for them, they gave them up, which led to the arrest of 2 of the LulzSec members. So definitely, if you're using any third-party products, even VPNs and proxies, make sure you understand that the information's not completely private. So yeah, even if you're using VPNs paid for, remember it's not 100% private. All right. So the last slide is some URLs here. We'll post these on our Discord channel server under presentations if you guys want to reference back these slides. There's a lot of cool things. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this very quick workshop. I'm sure everybody's busy. So does anyone have any kind of questions about what we covered or want to see anything again before we log off?
Why is your username an illness that causes cell death?
So way back in the day, before I realized it was an actual disease, I had learned, I don't know what it was, like 6th grade biology, and understood necro was like Latin for death, and like the rosis is like that was the suffix for diseases. So it was like the disease of death. It was my gamer tag when I was much younger. Anybody else have any questions? Did anyone able to follow like the Excel and figure out the answers on their own?